Me and my friends each have made a build created by a block palette that is randomly chosen by my friends. Let me explain. Tommy, Siv, Cherry and I all have chosen 3 random blocks to create a build with. Now the goal is to build something that consists mainly out of these 3 randomly chosen blocks. Now we of course didn't know these blocks and so had to come up with something within an hour to impress the others. Let's go. Now my 3 blocks were fire coral, dark prismarine and mangrove roots. What do you do with that? Nothing. Really, nothing. That's absolute utter bullshit. Thanks guys. So I scrolled on Pinterest for a while to get some inspiration, and then it hit me. I found these 2 pictures which really inspired me. I wanted to go for a sort of creepy mansion, a bit like the house the Wonsler had in the Lorax movie. That way I can incorporate the mangrove roots as a sort of dead grassy texture, while the fire coral and the dark prismarine will be the blocks the house will be made out of. So here we are on the time lapse. Like I said, I started off with the mangrove roots, made a little blob with pot soil at first, then did some fixing with the smooth tool, and then later on I added the mangrove roots and a little bit of mangrove wood actually, because it fit very well with the colors. Finished up with some dead grass. Now we can actually head to the main building. Now for the main building I have decided to use dark prismarine, as I thought it did look very well with that. And for the roof, I decided to use the fire coral block, as it did remind me of some roof bricks. I then continue with the second floor, which essentially is the same as the first floor with just a spiky roof. But then I had a look at the timer, and regrettably, it was way lower than anticipated. So I panicked. A lot. Which then meant that I really rushed the extended bit of the house. Which, well, did cause for some interesting architecture. Now, with the very little time that I then had left, I decided to rush out a fence around the build, a dead tree next to it, and a really, really sloppy pathway to the front of the building. You know, if I had more time, this could have been really great. But, you know, time management isn't really a strong suit of me, isn't it? But, you know, it's not too bad, is it?
So, those are my 3 blocks here. It was definitely an interesting challenge. I got the mangrove root, the exposed copper grade, and the weathered copper. So I looked through Pinterest, and I just didn't find much. So I took apart a piece of my metalwork and started drawing on it, and I drew up this really cool monolith shape. Then I just decided to use that. I still needed more colors for it though, so I started working on a color palette. As you can see, those 2 copper blocks work real well, but the mangrove root is really far away from them. So I had to figure out some way of solving this. I started up with raising the terrain in the center so my monolith could rest on it and it would stand out from the rest. I shaped up this monolith using wool first, and then I applied the colors to it. I gave it this kind of destroyed floating look using the grades. I think it looks really nice. And then I made this fluid ball drip out into some rivers on the ground. I textured the ground itself, and this is where I tried using the mangrove roots. They are there, but I don't think that was enough, so I designed some trees with roots too, and I plopped them a little bit all around the build. I added some details to the ground, so like some flowers and some dead coral. I added more trees again, and that was pretty much done.
Alright, so my 3 blocks were mossy cobblestone, light blue terracotta, and smooth red sandstone. So my initial idea was to make a pumpkin, but then I was like, I don't know how I'm going to incorporate these other colors. So I was like, okay, what if I did a lantern of some kind? So I was like, oh, okay, I'll do like a Chinese lantern because they're usually orange, reddish, you know. So I kind of went with that. So I did sort of like a Chinese traditional inspired build, but now I'm going to say it's very loosely inspired because I just kind of went on my own way with what I wanted it to look like, so keep that in mind. But yeah, so that's kind of my main reference. And then I didn't really know how to incorporate the light blue terracotta, so I kind of just made some flowers, as you can see later. And I also just kind of made a like string of like little flags, but they're just light blue terracotta. So I think if I had more time, I could have put more detail in. I feel like it's kind of bland. But I did try my best. And then I also struggled with the roof. The diagonal part, I just gave up halfway and I was like, I'll come back to that, which I needed a little bit more time to finish it. It looks very rough, but yeah, but it was really fun at like many mishaps, but we got over it. And I feel like I chose an inspiration really quickly. I just feel like it wasn't really well executed, but I did what I could with what I had. So yeah.
So my 3 blocks were the light grey concrete powder, stripped warped high fate, and the red mushroom block. And you know, thankfully to whoever chose red mushroom block did not realize that you can use the inside texture of the blocks, so I thankfully got away with using 4 blocks for my color palette. In general, just looking at this color palettes, the first thing that came to mind is just some sort of alien landscape, especially with like the red and the cyan being such contrasty colors that I felt like I had to go some sort of like alien-ish theme, and that really, you know, I kind of started looking at some alien landscapes and like some sort of space concept art for my build. And with that, I feel like I felt like I got the baseline pretty down of like what I want this to look like. In general, like a lot of the difficulty came with just filling in this big spot. I went way too big for the amount of time we had, especially with terrain, because there's a lot of just messing about and stuff. And then I also had the brilliant idea of having like a humongous tree in the center, which was also not very fun to do on a short time scale, especially building an organic or anything like that. And at the very end, you know, I did like a sprint basically, adding in, like, I realized that I should really have some sort of focus subject in the build, so I added in the little stone orb spaceship kind of thingy, just to like kind of focus your gaze into the center of the scene. But in general, I think it went quite well for the color scheme that I had. It definitely feels like the 3 colors that I had, and it came with an interesting result in general. I definitely think that I could have maybe done a little bit more with the vegetation and the trees in general if I had more time to work on it and refine it a bit more, and maybe the main tree could also have been a bit more interesting, but I think it came out quite well.
So, these are the 4 builds. Who do you think did it the best? What would you have done? Please let us know in the comments. I'm Nick, and this has been Project Adenium. See you next time.